Just some weeks back, I talked about how you can create better AI generated long form content for your business. And today, we'll be going deeper into that, into using AI generated content in your copywriting and your marketing. So copywriting is basically your advertising. Okay, our guest to explain that for us. So this is the Tech Your Business podcast where we break down technology to help your business learn more, earn more, and do more. My name is Peter, and if you've been using AI to create marketing content and you aren't impressed one bit by what it generates, like me, then you should just get a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a cup of water, whatever you prefer, and sit down and listen to this. So this will be a guest episode, and on today's episode, we'll be speaking with Amanda Fox. Amanda is a former head of marketing who decided to go full-time into writing copy for businesses. So she's obsessed with human versus AI copywriting. She's obsessed with sales conversions and also marrying both of them. So she'll tell us about that. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So what's your take on the AI generated content you've seen businesses generate over the past 1 year?
Well, I can definitely pick it out pretty much from the title. Any title with a colon in it that's about 10 words long is probably generated by AI. And I think we're all starting to realize that that is how the computer is spitting back its results. So I tend to not read any AI generated articles for two reasons. The first is that most people, when they use it in that format where they're just copying and pasting something directly out of ChatGPT, they have not checked it over themselves. They've not double checked the sources to make sure that it's accurate. And they were too lazy to write any part of it themselves. So why are they expecting me to read it? So I think today what we wanted to talk about is how can you overcome that hurdle? How can you use AI in a smart way without infuriating your readers and making them feel like you actually don't value what you're putting on your website?
That's really true. And I think in the last episode, so I talked about it, I said at this point, I'm able to also recognize AI generated content without even those GPT detectors. I just look at it and know, yeah, that's AI. And like you said, it's leaning too much on it, in my opinion. I feel it's a bit disrespectful of your readers because a lot of the time, like you said, it doesn't really show that you know what you're talking about, because if you take the AI content, you don't do anything to it and you put it out, that means that's AI. So we should be dealing with that AI. We shouldn't be dealing with you as a person. So when you talk about, okay, let's go back. I said you explain what copywriting is because most of us would understand it, but just for the few who might not really get, okay, copywriting, what are you talking about?
Right. Okay. So copywriting as a discipline, I would sort of boil it down into the business advertising led sort of writing that you do in a corporate setting. So blogs, website content, ad copy, headlines, slogans, pitch decks, anything that you write for your customers or for investors. That's all done by a copywriter. You have different types of writing. Journalistic writing is for news outlets. Creative writing is for books, mostly fiction, etc., poems, etc. So it's just a type of writing that focuses on the business aspects of language.
Yeah, business aspects. So now, when we were talking about what you think about this AI content everywhere, you said something which really caught me. You said that these days you don't even bother to read it.
No. And I think I'm not the only one. Like, if you are a brand and you cannot be bothered to spend even a few minutes writing something from your soul or hiring someone who actually cares to write it for you, then why should your audience bother to read it? They could just as easily type your headline into ChatGPT and get roughly the exact same information. So you're not actually adding any value. And that means that it's not going to pass Google's EAT test, right? right? This is not a helpful piece of content by definition because it's completely AI generated. And on the 16th of March, we saw Google take down hundreds of websites for having heavily AI generated content. And so I think it's really important that when you use AI to write short or long form content, that you are actively going in and injecting your own personality, your own anecdotes, your own research, your own juice into that piece to actually make it worthwhile and remove some of the telltale elements that help people recognize AI right off the bat so that they do give your piece a chance. Because when it is injected with your real personality and thoughts, it's actually worth reading, and Google should index it. And so I think the first step of that is to stop copy and pasting things from ChatGPT, right? Just don't do that ever for any reason. It's not worth it. There are ways to get ChatGPT to write things in a format that you can use more directly. So, for example, if you want to give a list of the top restaurants in your area. Now, you better have a GTP like Pro subscription because ChatGPT is like from 2022. But let's say that you used it for that. You can ask it to send you the results in a bulleted format, or you can ask for it to be as a list all on one line separated by commas. Just by telling it how you want it formatted, you will overcome some of the hurdles that ChatGPT has in formatting that make it so easy for people with their eyes to see that it's AI. Forget the fact that if you put it into an AI detector, it will detect it.
Yeah.
But because ChatGPT likes to format lists as a little subject, a colon, and then more information, and then another bullet with a little subject, a colon, and more
Yeah.
information. And that is just so obvious when people read it that whatever, even if the rest of your article is perfectly designed by you, they can see that that part you did not care about because you just copied and pasted, right? So changing the format, telling ChatGPT how to export results in a way that is in defiance of its base programming will help you just if you want to use little sections of it, right? But we don't want to say, write me a blog on blah, take that and paste it into a website because Google is actively decommissioning search results for websites that do that, right? They've made it clear, they've drawn a line in the sand that copy and paste AI content is not helpful. And it can't be because AI doesn't have any experiences.
Yeah.
It steals from your competitors and other people in the marketplace and then repackages that and spits it out. That doesn't provide anything useful, right? So that would be the first step, right? Stop copying and pasting. Don't do that. And if you need it to give you a specific set of results, tell it what format that you want it in so that it overrides its base programming.
Okay.
And that makes it a little bit easier to use it in situ in small segments of your writing.
All right. So you said stop copying and pasting, then ask it to generate in a format that you would prefer. So you talked about some of the telltale elements that make us able to see AI content with our eyes. What are some of those telltale elements?
So the first most basic one is a title that is verbose, right? So embracing the unknown, colon, how the future of healthcare is defined by computers, right? So it'll be like a very long title separated by a colon. For whatever reason, ChatGPT really loves to use colons, and human beings, when we write, they're super rare.
Yes.
So that right away is a dead giveaway. The second dead giveaway is that when it creates a sentence, it adds extra descriptors that are redundant,
True.
right? So, or so similar, like why would you bother to write that? So its sentences are very long. They're usually longer than 20 words often, and Google doesn't like that. So shorter sentences are better if you want to pass on readability score. But ChatGPT doesn't care about that. So it writes as long of a sentence as it possibly can because it thinks it's being detailed. And it will say things like, Peter from Tech Your Business is both responsible and professional. And he likes to do X, Y, Z, and blah. And it'll put an Oxford comma in front of the and. Now, in British written English, we tend to not use the Oxford comma anymore.
Yeah.
That's very American. So if it's a British website and you see an Oxford comma, either it was written by somebody who doesn't understand how we write things now, or it was written by AI,
Yeah.
which comes out of America and uses American sentence fragments, sentence framing. So Oxford commas, colons where they shouldn't be, big long titles with colons, lists, as I described, that are bullet point lists where there's like a small subject, then a colon, then more information.
Yeah.
Literally just changing it to a hyphen will do a lot of things for you, in terms of making it a little bit more unclockable, if that's your goal. What other stuff? Lists that are more than 3 items. So writers typically follow the rule of 3, which is when you make a list, you give them 3 things and that's it.
Yeah.
If you're going to give them more than 3 things, you tend to pull it in bullet points and just bullet points, no further explanation. And or you give them 5 things. So it's usually like 3 or 5, but it's almost never 4. But for whatever reason, ChatGPT loves to give you 4 things. And that is sort of strange from a linguistic perspective.
Yeah.
Like we don't really do that. So those, I think, are the most telltale elements that I can find, is that when it's writing a plain sentence and not a list, it will give 2 descriptive words that are sort of similar and say, you are professional and respectful, which isn't really necessary. By definition, professional includes respectful.
Yeah.
Really? So why would we say that? And then it gives you those lists with 4 items using an Oxford comma, lots of colons everywhere. That's how you can sort of tell right away that something was copied and pasted from specifically ChatGPT. Copilot doesn't do it as much. Copilot likes numbered lists. So if you use Copilot, you'll see 1, this thing with some descriptions, 2, this thing with some descriptions. So I think, those are things that if I'm noticing it as a professional, it isn't long before a layperson will pick it up. I promise you they are already noticing the titles.
Yes.
That is so obvious. And so I would say that if you are determined to use AI, don't copy its titles for sure. And instead of getting it to write you a full piece, why not just ask for an outline? And then you fill it in from your own brain and experience, adding something of actual value, citing the results so that it appears in search and things like that better than AI content, which will not give you cited results with the exception of Copilot. And that's at the bottom and nobody uses that. That's sort of where I think we should move to. AI is great, but it should be a tool for productivity, not an excuse to replace your own opinions, thoughts, facts, feelings, USPs, etc.
Yeah. Really true. I think I fully agree with you because the episode where I talked about AI, I talked about this outline thing too, because at the start when AI came out, I tried to use it to write, and I've always been a big reader since I was younger. I used to write. My dad was a journalist, so my mom was an English teacher. So you can just imagine.
Oh, wow, yeah. You've got that background.
Yeah. So I quickly realized that it wasn't working for most of the content, but the outline, because a lot of time when you want to write the first issue you have is just seeing that blank white screen. You have the ideas, but probably you don't know how to structure them, how to go through them. So I think that's one way I prefer using AI. So you talked about the outline and it being better using AI for outline. So what other ways do you feel it will be better for a business owner to use AI in their copywriting and marketing content as against, like you said, just asking, copying, pasting?
Yeah, listen, there was a brief window where copy and pasting was working for people, but it's not working anymore, right? Google has cut back on that. So what I would recommend, so let's start with reading. Using AI to read stuff that you don't have time to read is brilliant. So a lot of the work I do is around summarizing. I'll be looking at research reports and things like that. And I don't have time to sit there and read a 38-page research article, right? So I'll go to the section that's relevant to what I want to use my research for. I will copy and paste the content from that into ChatGPT or Copilot, and I will ask it to summarize it, right? Then I can get that core nugget and use it in my writing. So that's helpful because it speeds up time. I don't have to read so much anymore, which I think is great. The next thing is, of course, creating those outlines, right? So I wrote a book. I used ChatGPT to create the chapter outline for this book, right? I had it analyze. I said, right, of all the copywriting books that have been popular in the last 20 years, right? What things did they talk about? And can you create a 32 line structure outline for a small book? It's not a big one. I want it to be a desk resource that covers all of those topics, right? And then I took that outline that it gave me and I pasted it into Word and I started writing, And that was so helpful because when you're writing a book, even a small one, the outline is super important. You need to make sure that you know where the story is going, all the things that you're going to talk about, how you're going to start and end the book. So I start the book with like an intro to copywriting, what it is, what it means, talking about target audiences, etc. And I end the book with A/B testing and how to use technology just like AI in order to simplify some of your tasks, right? And I had AI help me write it by creating an outline that would follow the hero's journey. So that even as a nonfiction book, it's actually sort of more interesting to read. We're going somewhere with this. So outlining is a great way to do it. And so I would say, in my writing process, I start with Google because most of my customers, they want to rank on search. I start with Google. I look at the questions people often ask, and I come up with a topic for an article if they haven't already given me one. Come up with a topic, and then I plug that into ChatGPT, and I say, create me a blog outline with, say, 6 sections. If it's a 500-word article, with 6 sections covering whatever topic it is, answering this question. And then I take that, refine it a little bit because sometimes it will drone on and it will suggest you talk about something a different way that you've already talked about. And then just paste that into a Word document and then just flesh it out, right? That has sped up my writing process by about 10 minutes, right? And when you are a volume writer like I am, 10 minutes is 10 pounds. So every 10 minutes that I can save is another 10 quid, right? That I could be making, right? So I think that's probably the approach that I would use if I was trying to do it myself as a small business owner. I would start with what people are actively searching for on Google. I would take that, plug it into a free tool like ChatGPT, ask it to flesh you out an outline, copy and paste that outline into your, say, Google Docs or whatever you use, and then flesh that out, writing around what it gives you and removing all the colons and Oxford commas, etc. Not keeping the structure that it gives you, but giving the framework, right? And then when you've written something, I would take that writing, provided that it does not contain any IP. That's very important because these platforms are not protected. So do not put your sensitive business data into them. I would take what I've written and put it into a different system like Copilot and say, is there anything missing from this article? Because it will tell you why it thinks it isn't complete. It will tell you, oh, I think that you should talk about the health concerns of XYZ, or you should talk about productivity of XYZ. And it will give you examples and resources that you can use to flesh out the article further and make it even more detailed. Now, the reason why you want to do that is because if Google thinks that you're not providing helpful and complete answers, it will not rank you as high. So doing that extra check, which no one tells you to do, will actually give you better writing because you can flesh out the angles that the computers are looking for, which means Google's algorithm is looking for, the voice search algorithms are looking for, the generative AI is looking for, and that will help you rank across all these different forms of search. Nobody talks about voice search anymore because they're obsessed with AI, but it is becoming a very popular search mechanism. People are just too lazy to type. So they're like, oh, okay, Google, how do you do X, Y, Z? And then it's giving results that are position 0, which used to be something we all strove for and then forgot about the second that ChatGPT came
Yeah.
around. But we're also not optimizing for generative search, which is the new emerging search format. And by asking Microsoft Copilot or Gemini or any of the other search-based tools, what's missing from your piece, you will connect those dots and have much more effective writing as a result.
That's really comprehensive. And I think it gets a lot of things that people miss out on when they try to, even I miss out on when I try to use AI for content and everything. So you've mentioned Google a couple of times, Google indexing a couple of sites March 16th, like you said. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I saw the story break on Search Engine Journal, and they were talking about how Google regularly updates its algorithms and what it considers to be helpful. For a while, they hadn't outright said that AI content will be deranked. I think we're probably playing with the idea of perhaps it's something they could monetize with Gemini, which used to be called Bard, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe for business reasons, they didn't say that. But if you subscribe to the sort of EAT philosophy of creating helpful content, you kind of knew it was never going to rank in situ, right? For a lot of reasons. It's not cited. It doesn't provide anything new. It's only remixed. So there's no anecdotes. There's no human intervention whatsoever. And when Google realized that it is AI, it knows that it is probably not fact checked because, if you don't know where the citations are coming from, then you cannot really properly fact check it. So I would caveat and say that Copilot by Microsoft does now provide the citations of where it's getting its information from, but it isn't a popular resource. People are still using ChatGPT. So, I hold my hands up. So what happened on the 16th is that basically Google started applying its rules that it's, always had. It sort of tightened the hooks around it. And I think something like 700, maybe 800 websites that were highly ranked were just lost position overnight. Wow. Because according to some analysis done on those websites, a large proportion of the content was found to be AI generated, right? So that tells me something as well. It means that even if you are going to use AI to create just an outline and write around it, you need to make sure that Google or these, detectors don't think that your content is AI generated, even if you have written it, right? So by doing that, you can use something like GPT-0 or CopyLeaks AI detector. These are free resources, and plug in your copy, provided it isn't super long form. They do have character limits, but plug in your copy and just make sure that it's coming out as human generated. That will help you overcome these sort of issues as Google tries to scrape this off the internet. And you might be asking, why does Google want to scrape this off the internet? Well, AI learns from AI. And if there's no human generated input, then we're seeing the real dead internet theory happen, right?
Yeah.
Where, I don't know if you've seen it on Facebook, all these AI generated images that the older people really love. They're like, oh, God bless America. And it's like Jesus with a crocodile and a school bus full of shit. These aren't real images, but they're now being liked by older people, but also the bots are liking the images. And then the images are being generated by bots who then like the images. And now Facebook is just a pile of trash, right? That isn't what Google wants for the internet, because you can't monetize a pile of trash. You can only monetize legitimate advertisers who want to give you money, right? So they have a vested interest in getting trash off their platform. And I was speaking with another podcast creator about, well, what about if it isn't written content? What if they're using it to generate YouTube scripts, etc.? It's coming for you as well. right? So YouTube doesn't want trash on its platform either. It wants content people will enjoy watching. And as people become more savvy to AI, realize that no thought or care was put into creating this, that it isn't the opinions of a real person, that it's just the same basic dribble they've seen a million times, then viewership plummets. And when viewership plummets, advertisers don't want to advertise on low value videos, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I'm talking. How does it know? It can create transcripts now, right? We know this. So do not think that you are getting around it by speaking your AI generated content or having one of those AI voices or those AI avatars read it for you. It will not work in the long term, right? And what you don't want to do is build an empire on sand.
Yeah.
Could you do it right now and get like a couple million views, blah, blah, blah? Absolutely. I'm sure you could, right? And in the very short term, it would work. However, in the very long term, it is pointless because the changes that have already hit the Google ecosystem on search will hit its ecosystem on YouTube, will hit the ecosystem on TikTok, so on and so forth. It's just a matter of time because all these platforms have no interest in having trash content that feeds more trash content because that isn't what actually sells. That isn't what gets views. That isn't what, not in the long term. As people become more educated, they want authenticity. They want real stories. They want real people with real opinions telling them something new, interesting, and different.
Interesting. So I think from what you've said so far, you've talked about the telltale signs. You've talked about what do they call it? The way people can use AI to generate outlines, to read, you can confirm what you've done with another LLM. I feel a business owner should be able to know how they can use this AI in generating those things. So I know we've answered the question of the episode. So now let's talk about sales conversions. Sales conversions,
Yeah.
yeah. So you said you marry human versus AI generated content and sales conversions, and we all know if we keep writing every day and there's nobody interested in the content, like you said, you don't read some content because of the way it is. If there are no interested people reaching out to you to buy what you have to offer, you might go out of business soon because you're wasting so much time writing whatever you're writing. So tell us a bit about that marrying of those two things you talked about.
Yeah, so I like to look at AI as like a virtual assistant, right? So they're going to be someone I can sense check ideas off of, that I can use to read stuff faster, that I can use to like jumpstart my thinking and support my own creativity and care, right? Now, if you don't have time to write tons of stuff, that is why copywriters exist. And there is a copywriter for every sort of budget, whether you outsource it to very competent copywriters in India who have a specific style, and whether you choose to use native copywriters like myself, you can get a human being to write things for you for very little money. It doesn't actually cost that much. So what you can't do is get us to create the sales platform on which you will differentiate yourself. And so this is a great place where AI can actually support you because there are a lot of things that I'm sure your customers are telling you. There are a lot of things that are good about your product that you have not picked out or used as a sales angle. And AI is really great at that sort of thing. So don't put any proprietary stuff into a into a public AI. That I will say it again. But what you can do is, provided it doesn't have any customer data, you can put customer service inquiries, complaints, reviews, all that sort of stuff into ChatGPT and ask it to pull out a common thread. What are people saying about my product? What do they love about it? What do they hate about it? Where do I need to focus my R&D efforts? Where do I need to position my marketing? There's very little to be gained from trying to turn your product into something that it isn't, right? Focus instead on the strengths, on the reasons why customers love your product, how it's solving problems for them, and use that to create your sales landing pages and things like that, right? So once again, AI can be used to frame this, to give you a jump start that you will then write short, mobile-friendly, pyramid-based landing pages on, where you put the most compelling argument up at the top with the least amount of detail, and then you increase detail further as you go down the page if they're not yet convinced. That's the way to write landing pages, and anyone who tells you differently is not a buyer of your product, right? Because the buyer of your product will be convinced by the first or second thing that you tell them that this 100% matches what they need. And if they need more information, they'll scroll down the page. But most of the time, it's the littlest bit of detail at the top that actually tells them what they need to know. And then they will buy and make it easy for them to buy, etc. So you can do some of your market research, consumer insights, things like that, using ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever, by having it read, collate, analyze data, and give you those key insights that you can then take forward and write with. But it doesn't replace you understanding your consumer either. So you want to sense check some of that stuff and say, right, I'm targeting these sort of people. They're this age, they live here, they have these concerns, right? This is my product. This is what it does. This is the selling points of my business, the things that make me different. What are the key marketing messages that combine those two things, right? And ask it to give you that stuff. It actually does produce really compelling marketing campaign ideas that you just need to flesh out and add personality and brand tone of voice to, right? That will save you hours of time, thousands of dollars, like, with a marketing agency trying to understand your business, et cetera,
Yeah.
because you're going to take the power of the internet, the combined knowledge of human existence up to this point, and put it to work on your business plan, right? And that's fine. You can do it. You can use it that way. You can also use it to streamline your customer service responses. So I don't know about you, but sometimes when I sit down to write an email, even though I'm a writer, the emotions are in it. My feelings are in it. Sometimes I'm too passionate or angry or whatever. And my initial first draft is like not appropriate, right? So sometimes it can help to take, obviously removing sensitive data, take an email that you receive that you need to respond to, pop it into ChatGPT, and just say, like, how should I respond to this in the positive or in the negative or whatever? How do I politely tell them they can't have a refund or whatever? And then get that first draft, plunk it in, and humanize it, right? Put your own words in, simplify it, whatever. But that can really help because Google isn't indexing your emails in that regard. So it's not going to hurt your search ranking. And as long as you humanize the text, take the colons out, take the Oxford commas out, make it shorter, etc., then people won't know that you used AI to like write the response unless it's super verbose, etc. But it can help speed up things like that allow you to focus on delivering your product, delivering your service, and stop you when you get into a creative roadblock or a strategy roadblock where you just don't know where to go. That's where I think AI can help. AI can also create lists and things like that you put on brochures, write the first draft of copies for sales letters, help you come up with slogans. I mean, don't use them in situ, but use them as creative fuel for your brain in order to create that offline content, because offline content is important, packaging, etc. It's all important. And AI can support you with that. And you can use that with less changes than you would need to make with online content. So I would say that's probably for sales conversions. It's using AI to help identify what your target audience cares about, where they are, how you can find them, how you can talk to them. It's so good at that. I even have like an offer that I put up on People Per Hour where I will just have a meeting like this with a client. Then I'll go and plug it into AI for them. And they know that it's an AI generated report, et cetera. I have a structure of things that I ask, but it takes me a third of the time to do than it would writing everything by hand. And all I'm doing is sense checking it and saying, right, as someone with over a decade of marketing experience, does this stuff actually make sense? Are there any good ideas in here? What's trash? I sort of edit it. And I only charge 200 quid for that. Whereas if you went to a marketing agency, et cetera, that, they're not using AI, or maybe they are, I don't know, they might charge you thousands to come up with a marketing strategy and stuff like that. So I think AI is really good for that. It's good for being your assistant. It isn't supposed to be your employee.
Nice one. Nice one. So we talked earlier before the show started, before recording started, about search with AI. So can you tell us a bit about that and how it relates to businesses?
Okay, yeah. So just as I say that it's going to be your assistant, not your employee, if people are using AI to do research, right, then they're using AI to curate the internet for them. Ideally, you want your brand to appear in queries that are relevant to your brand. So if someone asks, like, what's the best headphone manufacturer, and you're LG, maybe you want to come up in those results. So there was a study, and this research is sort of emerging. So I would say that this could change. But there was a study done by some students at Princeton, Georgia Tech, some contributors from the Allen Institute for AI, and ITT Delhi. And they're talking about generative engine optimization. And they've actually coined that term. And that is search done by AI. So like Bing Chat, Copilot, etc. What is it looking at? And they found that you can get a more increased likelihood of appearing in generative AI search results if you do a couple things. And they're not that revolutionary. It's things that if you were SEO optimized, you probably were doing anyway. So the first one is citing your sources, right? So if you say something and it isn't something you came up with in your brain, then you need to credit the person who said it. And hopefully it's a high value source, like a research group, a university, a leading brand, et cetera, right? Then you need to put in statistics, right? Because computers love statistics. It just makes sense why they would naturally gravitate towards things written that include stats. And then lastly, if you are talking in an authoritative tone, that ranks better because computers are a bit formal. So I would say the third one isn't relevant for most brands. If you're B2C, definitely do not talk in an authoritative tone. Your customers will hate it.
Yeah.
But the first two are really relevant, right? So if you cite your sources, if you actually link to other websites, which for a while, even though it's SEO best practice, we kind of stopped doing it, thinking like, why would I give this other website good SEO juice? I promise you, Harvard does not need your backlink, okay? So you can link to these authoritative sources without really having to worry about it. It will only help you and they do not care. And then adding in statistics, right? That's why commissioning your own research is going to be so important going forward because computers, they love numbers. They want to give you numbers. And if you don't have any numbers, then you're likely to be less ranked. So those are the two that I encourage my clients to focus on. Don't be afraid of providing backlinks to other authoritative websites, especially governmental, education, research, etc. Fine. And then include some statistics. If you don't have them, get them. Commission a study, commission a survey, et cetera, get those sort of things. And if you're a B2B brand with a more formal customer base, then absolutely go for an authoritative tone. So to say that things will do this, that they must do this, not can or should, right? That's more authoritative tone. So this sort of generative engine optimization is an emerging science, right? ChatGPT has only been around for like a year now, at least in the public domain.
Yeah.
So there may be things that come in the future that influence it. But to be honest, if your content that you already have is already optimized for SEO and you have included backlinks and you are using stats, then you're probably already ahead of the game. And if it isn't, just those two little changes will make a huge difference in encouraging the robots to find your content and serve it within Copilot, etc. Right? So and people are going to be like, well, I'm a chips brand. How do I include stats, right? And just ask your customers, right? Do a poll, do a survey, create those statistics within your own marketplace because ChatGPT doesn't know the difference between that and a official study done by Harvard, really, to be honest. So create your own statistics. It will also help convince your customers because a lot of effort is put on the soft, like qualitative kind of stuff. And there's very little quantitative stuff to convince your left brain. I know that's a bit outdated terminology, but your left brain, more analytical buyer, that what you have is amazing. So whatever your product is, there is no reason now to exclude statistics.
All right, so we've heard it. If you're already SEO optimized, I'm sure we know what that is, then the new term GEO, probably. GEO optimization. So you heard Amanda, include statistics, create statistics from your customers, custom statistics, add them in your content, cite authoritative sources, add backlinks to authoritative sources. She said Harvard doesn't need your links, so you can cite them.
true. Yeah.
You can cite them freely. Then, if you're B2B, like you said, use an authoritative tone in your communication. So those three. So you mentioned your book earlier, the copywriter's formula. So can you just give us a brief overview of what the book is about?
Yeah, so the copywriter's formula, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can just get it for free, right, on your Kindle. And it is about how to write more persuasive copy, even if you aren't a copywriter. So this is something that any business owner, any marketer, any even junior marketing exec can use to write better copy. And if people go, I don't write copy, I promise you do, right? Because even if you're just writing an email to a customer, that qualifies as copy that a copywriter is often paid to write. So things like speaking persuasively, using correct tone, mirroring your customer, using the linguistic structure that they like, the words that they understand. It talks about generative copywriting. And when I mean that, I don't mean generative AI. I mean speaking to different generations and different types of people. And how to do that and where to go for those insights. You can absolutely use ChatGPT to learn more about your customers and how they might talk. It has access to the whole internet before 2022. It can tell you stuff about what Gen Z words there are and how
Yeah.
to use them, et cetera, et cetera. It also talks about useful things like A/B testing and how to test different versions of the same idea on your website so that you generate better sales results. This is very much a sales tool in order to generate profits. It talks about how to write in order to convince people to buy and the pitfalls of super long landing pages, for example, which is
Yeah.
something we did back in the 90s, 2000s in order to like trick Google's algorithm. But actually, your customers hate it. They are busy. They just want something that solves their problem. They want to buy it on their mobile unless it's over a certain value, and then that's laptop purchases. But generally speaking, most stuff they just want to be able to quickly buy, make a decision in a few seconds, and have it be a seamless process.
Yeah.
So my book is a desk reference guide. It is heavily paginated. All of the chapters are really obvious. So this one's on headlines and hooks.
Yeah.
And it gives you an example of different hooks that actually was given to me by ChatGPT. And I say, don't copy these because they're cringy and clickbaity, but they are an example of what a question hook is, what a curiosity hook is, a how-to hook and how to write those. When you are writing emails, when you're writing blogs, when you're writing anything, you need to have a compelling headline. And so you could go to chapter 5 and learn how to do that. And you don't have to commit it to memory because you could just keep this tiny book on your desk and go back to it, or pin it in your Kindle and go back to it. So I wanted to write something for the people who can't afford to hire me, right? That would help them write better copy for their own business, that if they have Kindle Unlimited, cost them nothing. And if they don't, cost them a few quid. I want it to be very accessible.
Nice. All right. So if for our listeners, if they want to reach out to you, probably they want to get your book, The Copywriter's Formula, or they want to work with you, maybe they are tired of their AI content and they need an expert to go over their content so they can finally make sales with their content, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is creativecopyuk.com. That's creative with an 8 because I'm a millennial and that was the thing back in the day. Creativecopyuk.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Amanda Fox, pretty easy name to find over here in the UK. And you can buy my book, The Copywriter's Formula. Tips for exceptional sales copy that anyone can use. It's on Amazon. So just search for The Copywriter's Formula and it should come up and you can get it that way.
All right. So we'll put the links to your LinkedIn, the link to the creativecopy.uk and
With an 8, don't forget.
with an 8. Most important. So those will be in the show notes and on the screen once this goes out. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And for the listeners, I hope you got value from this episode. I've learned a lot and I've used AI since it came out. So you can imagine how much I've learned from this. So if you got any value from this episode, please share it with anybody you know who has challenges with AI, who has challenges with their content, who writes so much content and don't get anything out of it. Share this episode with them. And if you want to be the first person to know when we post helpful content like this every week for your business, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to or watching it on. So this is another episode on AI. We've talked a bit about AI. Like I mentioned, episode 67 was using AI to generate long form content. Episodes 2 and 9 were also on AI. So once you're done with this episode, you can just scroll down, check out those episodes. Until next week, when we are back with a new episode, just keep looking for ways to keep taking your business. Bye for now.